There's one thing you can count on us for. It's to make a mockery of ourselves. And to try and use the word mock in any kind of way possible if we're talking about mock drafts and things like that. Many things, well, not really creative, but nonetheless, I'm with three co hosts who are absolutely very creative and very talented and very knowledgeable about the draft and some of these big players in it. So I'm excited to have them with me. It's Vikings with Panthers, Giants, and Eagles. Gentlemen, thank you for taking the time tonight. How's everyone doing?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
Living the dream. It's a beautiful Wednesday night, and it's starting to act like spring. But anyways, as you can tell from the name of the episode and the opening, and kind of what we alluded to last episode, we're shifting gears to draft season now. Our free agency is dying down. I think we've seen a couple of players go for the min bid for those that are still getting bid on. So we're just about at that point. So now it's time to focus on doing your evaluations and figuring out what you're going to do with the draft. We have a little over a month until our draft starts, but a little under a month until the NFL draft starts. So it's really that time to check out the pro days, check out the measurables, watch the tape, etc. Um, but Panthers and I this last week have done a little bit of the work for you, and others have in previous weeks, looking at where we think the league is going to go towards some of these certain players. So we'll go through some of those mocks. They were posted in the analytics channel. I also started a mock draft message board post. So, if James, you want to post yours there, if you have write ups, or if others, when they do mocks themselves, want to post there, by all means. Kind of a fun thing we do every once in a while, just to kind of give different opinions on things, and it's fun to kind of help your own evaluations by looking at some of this stuff. But we'll go ahead and start with James's. I think he posted his Monday morning.
Something like that.
We'll hit some of the highlights there. So again, I think a couple of big questions at the top of the board. I think all of us see that Bengals rolling Tannehill could use a QB upgrade, but I think everyone's kind of leaning Bijan for him right now, pending him getting a terrible landing spot. Like I think I've seen a couple of mocks where he's gone to the Seahawks. Pending that, probably going Bijan, and then after that, it's the order the three QBs go. What has Bryce sticking out to you as the top option of the three?
The football IQ. It's a lot higher than everybody else. You go back and watch him play against Georgia these last couple of years. Down receivers, down couple offensive linemen, and the guy is still balling. Obviously, there's the height concern, but he's shown, for me, I have him rated a little bit higher than Kyler Murray coming out. With Kyler Murray, he had all the talent in the world, was a little bit faster than Bryce. I would say Bryce Young has probably got good to great speed versus Kyler's elite speed. But his just total football IQ package, I feel he can play and play for a long time. Not as many injury concerns as a Tua, because didn't get hurt, and he's actually a little bit thicker looking at him in the lower half than Tua is. And from a fantasy side of it, he gives you more run upside than Stroud does, and you don't take the arm concerns and issues that you would with Anthony Richardson for me. So
yeah, no, I love his football IQ. The player I keep everyone's using the Kyler comp because of the size and the mobility, but the player he reminds me more of is Russell Wilson. Is high football IQ and scrambles to throw rather than scrambles to run. He's going to get plenty of yards, probably in the 400 to 500 range, I would guess, rushing, just because of the nature of his ability to scramble. But he's going to piss off a lot of teams because he's going to escape. He's going to start scrambling. Defenses are going to collapse, and he's going to hit somebody for 40 yards downfield because he's got the arm to do it, and he's got the vision to do it too. Especially when he breaks pocket and he doesn't have 6'6" lineman in front of him. So I like him a lot. Again, I think there's kind of pluses and minuses for all those, and his is probably the most obvious with the height and size. Then you have Stroud is second. I know you mentioned some of the arm concerns there. Is it more arm strength, or are you concerned about his release point, or what are you thinking there?
There's just some inconsistencies with Stroud. His footwork, everything. Stroud is a very, very good QB prospect. I have a lot of my issues more has to do with the structure of the offense. People don't seem to realize how good of a job Kevin Wilson has done as an offensive coordinator and how good of an offensive mind he's been his entire career in college. He's had a top 5 offense in college football now for like 11 years, and he was only at Ohio State for 5 of those. So that kind of tells you, even with some of the lesser talent he's had in other places, which is part of the reason they have issues progressing to the next stage. But there's a lot of smaller nitpicky stuff with Stroud. I think he's going to have a little bit of that. He's going to be good at the next level. He's definitely a lot better than a Fields was, or a lot of the other Ohio State QBs coming out. It's just, I don't know how much of the running game you get with Stroud, because he didn't show it much. Obviously, he showed it in the Georgia game, him being more mobile. But I just feel Young is a more complete product day one.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll get to the order I had them in for my mock, but I think it's definitely going to be a dealer's choice for these 3 guys. We've been doing a lot of talking. Brandon, RJ, do you guys have some thoughts on the QBs?
I'm a huge fan of Stroud. I agree with all of the statements. I think physical capabilities aren't necessarily any issue. It's going to be if he goes to the to an offense that is going to help him excel, and kind of just I don't want to say like football IQ, but like he's going to have to do it on his own now. Like he doesn't have a great offensive mind behind him, so it's without that safety net, if he doesn't have a safety net like that, it'll be interesting to see how he pans out. But everything physical is A+ for me.
Yeah, I really like Stroud. He'd probably be my number one in real life. Especially if he goes to the Panthers. Like, they have a really good O-line. They have some decent weapons. And the coaching infrastructure on offense there is
Fantastic
pretty good.
for
Like,
a rookie QB.
What's that?
It's fantastic for a rookie QB.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, whoever lands on the Panthers is going to have a really good starting point. And like the Texans, who presumably will have the other of Young or Stroud, they also have like a decent receiving core. And I don't think their O-line's super great outside of their high-paid left tackle. But yeah, I like Stroud, but I think in terms of our fantasy draft, the context of the team making the pick is really important, because I think the upside of Anthony Richardson, if you can be patient, and just the floor that his rushing ability could offer, could be really enticing for one of these teams if they know they're not going to be competitive this year. That might be a better pick fantasy wise.
Yeah, I mean, so not to jump between mocks because that's going to get confusing. I think that's the reason I put Richardson as the top QB in my mock, because I think there's going to be a learning curve for all these QBs. There always is for a rookie, unless you're Joe Burrow. But the rushing opportunity there, and in any of either Carolina or Houston or Indianapolis, there's going to be a part of that game where he's asked to run the ball a lot. It's a question of how good are the lines there, and I think there's bright spots in each of those places, but not necessarily the all-world line or top 10 NFL line to start with there. So there's going to be a lot of situations where he's asked to run, and going to be one of those kind of, I think is one of your main criticisms of Fields this year, James, where he's a running back playing quarterback, and that's great for fantasy football, well, not for real football. So if I'm talking real football, I'm not saying he's QB1, but fantasy football, I think I got to put him there just because of the rushing floor But I agree with everything you said about Young too. But the reason I have him as the third QB coming off for me is, again, he has the skills to be that outlier. But if you look at first round quarterbacks at that height and weight combination, there's two QBs all the way to the left of the chart, him and Kyler Murray, and everyone else is just kind of just has not hit. So there's the opportunity to do it, but he's got to be the outlier to do it, and that scares me a little bit. And I know you talk about less of the injury concerns, but of the three main prospects, he was one who probably missed the most time this year due to injury. Now, that said, it's a question of how healthy was he for some of those games that he did lose, and how healthy was he, for the full season. But that's my only concern with him is the durability aspect, especially when we're seeing some of these highly touted QBs having trouble early in their NFL careers.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out that Justin Fields was QB9 this past season, with a very unimpressive passing resume and a really solid rushing resume.
Yeah. So I mean that's the only reason I had it going in that order. But yeah, I think if I was drafting an NFL team, not a fantasy team, I'd probably go in the order that you have. And
well, part of my thing about it with Justin Fields is just go and look at Lamar, and then go look at all these guys. It's obvious when they play certain teams, like when you watch the Bears this year play the Lions. I don't know if you guys noticed it. Their linebackers, I think, had 6 or 7 unnecessary roughing penalties against Fields. They got frustrated because they were already having enough issues dropping back, doing what they were supposed to do. They were having a hard time against the run game. And then, they get these 3rds and 7s, and Fields just takes off for the first down, and they're smacking the dude late. It's more hits on the QB, more likely to get hurt, miss games, especially when they're more physical runners. A Lamar is at least finesse. He slides a lot. He does a great job getting out of bounds, not taking the hits. Fields takes the hits. AR takes the hits. When you do have the more physical runners, the Cam Newtons, whatnot, they are the ones who miss more time too. But yeah.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot more of the injury concern there as well. That's a completely fair point. Let's shift over to the wide receiver conversation. You and I both have JSN coming off the board first, although I think as we were just discussing pre-pod, I think we have some of our rankings pretty close in some of those evaluations. And for both of our mocks, I think we're taking into account that there may be a little bit more hype around some of the players that we see at the position. But I think you've got 4 in your top 10, if I count correctly. Trying to think of what the question would be here, but I guess tell me a little bit more about what you were seeing when you're kind of slotting who was taking which receiver.
I had the Cowboys being the Cowboys and taking Quentin Johnston, the receiver I hate the most out of all the hyped ones. So, beyond that, everyone's going to have their own thing that they like about these guys. People are going to love JSN because you go watch the Utah game and it's like, oh my goodness, did you see that guy go for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns? Like, wow, he's crazy. And then you're going to look at Jordan Addison and you're going to be like, that guy made Kenny Pickett a first-round pick. And then he helped Caleb Williams get his Heisman. And then you go look at Zay Flowers and you're going to be like, that guy was really productive on a really awful Boston College team with no receiver or no QB to really help him at all. So it's really pick your poison out of those 3, and then someone will take Johnston. And football's better when there's a lot of good players out there. So I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not high on them.
Yep. And again, I'm there with you. Johnson has those same attributes that when I looked at Jalen Reagor and Josh Doctson TCU, maybe think, ooh, this guy's good. Went that kind of Vince McMahon on it, like, oh my goodness, like 4.4 speed, that size, that kind of stat production. But the old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Won't get fooled again, whatever, people want to say there. So I think I might be in kind of USC wide receiver territory there until Juju came out. Like, all right, the guy's got to prove it before I'm really going to buy off on it. Like I was saying to you pre-draft or pre-pod, outside of JSN, I feel and like Flowers, I see a lot of these receivers with definitely some A plus qualities, but then a lot of qualities that are C or below in terms of grading. Like again, I talked about Quentin Johnson and sort of his route tree, what he did against Big 12 competition. Hooray! Hyatt looks like it's a one-trick pony. The testing with Addison, things like that. There's a reason for concern for everyone outside of JSN and Zay for me. But as it turns out with these guys every year, there's going to be a couple of these guys who we damn because they had a bad draft process and then come out and drop 1,000 yards in the first year or 800 yards in the first year. So, it's like any evaluation here. It's tough to get this stuff right. But Brandon and RJ, what are you guys thinking?
I love this wide receiver class. Other than JSN, I don't think there's any like superstars or anything like that. But I think a lot of them, regardless of their measurables, a lot of them play the game in a way that will impact the way that football's played right now. Like they might not have been great options in like previous years, but just they will find a spot on a team and be productive. And there's, in my opinion, there's like 11 of them.
I can definitely see that. And there's a lot of guys that would fit a role in an offense. And to know these guys' true production value is going to be having a better understanding of the offense they're going to be going into, what they're going to be asked to do.
Yeah, I think I like a decent amount of these like top 5 or 7 wide receivers. I think their landing spot is going to completely flip where they end up actually going. But JSN is definitely my number one personally.
Yeah. All right. So kind of moving on to, I'd say, let's go with the positive, and we'll go with the negative after that. Talk about depth in this class. RJ said, there's a receiver for everybody here. But if you talk about, hey, you need to add at a position. If you're coming into this draft looking for a D end or a tight end, your options are probably a lot stronger this year than they were in previous years. I know, you've got edge players all over your mock and probably have a couple going a little bit later than I had in mine, James. But again, I think there's probably like 7 or 8 DNs coming out of this class. And with the shift to sort of a more true position where they're going to get the DN designation, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw anything from like 8 to 12 of these guys go in the first.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of them. There really is. That's going to be another one of those too, where it's going to be interesting to see where some of these guys go and which veterans they're going to be competing with, and or what guys are going to be going to teams that already have good ones. They're going to just be rotational pieces at first that you're going to have to be a little bit more patient with. But we'll go probably in our 3rd round, and in 3 years we'll probably been worth a first rounder.
Yep. And then from a tight end perspective, obviously Washington showed out in a crazy way at the combine, and I think we both like Mayer and Kincaid before even the process started. And then you've got other guys like Musgrave and others who you're going to like. I think I ended up with 3 tight ends in my mock, and I think you had 2 in yours, but I would imagine Washington was probably not too far behind in the 2nd round for you.
No, he's not. He'd be one of my premium guys at the top of the 2nd. Just the size, speed, everything combo that he does possess. He's going to be a starter. He's going to see a lot of snaps. When you start and you see a lot of snaps, you're going to get opportunity. And he showed at Georgia, when given the opportunity, he was a capable offensive player. So just get more opportunity at the next level.
Yeah, and again, the thing that kind of I probably focus more in on my process than I should is, what are those, standout moments? Like what did you do either in a game or at the combine or in the pro day where I just kind of had to stop and rewind and say, what the hell did I just see? Beyond the measurable pieces, like in kind of the practice reps that they were doing, when Washington was pushing the sled, he was pushing it like an O lineman. Like you saw him do it, then you saw, I think it was like Kincaid or Mayer kind of come right afterwards and do it. And it was like he pushed that thing like effortlessly, like, at a relatively offensive lineman pace. And then you put any of these other guys behind it, and it's like, okay, he's moving it, but not very quickly. It's like, you want someone to get on the field. He's going to be on the field immediately. It's kind of, that offensive lineman, six offensive lineman playing tight end. And then you put him in a situation where he learns to release, and he's got size and speed for days. So someone's going to fall in love with that, I think, in the second round and just, probably nab him sooner than they would otherwise.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who kind of like a Rob Gronkowski type. Coming out of college, obviously Gronk had a lot more production on the offensive side catching the ball, and had his injury issues, which is why he slid to where he did. But whenever you get a guy who is, that 6'6" range, 6'7" range, I know there was some controversy about a picture of him standing next to a guy who measured at 6'7", and Darnell somehow measured in at 6'6". So he's expected to be actually 6'7", not 6'6", whatever with that. But yeah, whenever you have a tight end who can block that well, and when he did get the ball at Georgia, he looked impossible to take down from the DBs, which, you're 6'7", you're 260. And without, yeah, he's definitely going to be a fun guy to watch.
I feel like if you have a deep tight end class in our fantasy league, that's a reason to not take one in the first round and just wait for in the second round to snag a guy at a better value, especially since it's a position that takes sometimes years before you become fantasy relevant. I would, this is my personal PSA, is I wouldn't really take a tight end in the front half of this first, especially, but maybe even in the first round at all, and use it on a more premium position elsewhere.
Yeah, I would say that the one thing too is we're doing this with no idea of landing spots. You'll recall a couple of years back when Mark Andrews went to Baltimore 2 rounds later after Hayden Hurst, he fell to the 3rd round of our draft. Where if you look at him pre-draft, he was a first rounder, probably on a lot of boards in terms of talent. But then where he slid in and how he slid on the draft, he definitely slotted out differently. So I don't disagree with Brandon said. I'm not sure where Brandon went, but landing spots especially are going to have a huge impact on how these tight ends end up actually getting drafted.
I definitely agree. But just in my personal mock, I had the Patriots taking Michael Mayer. He's a guy who's came out and said that he's kind of, it's the Pats. You never know if he's going to try to build to win, if he's going to build to lose. You take the league's top tight end, you might never get the exact kind of draft capital he puts into it at the pick I have him using, but you could get your capital of some similar value back for him if he decides to ship him, and if he decides to keep him, like we've also just said, it can take a couple years for tight ends to come around. So he could be a minimal point scorer, or at least not a top 10 guy. But,
yeah, especially that first year. He fits that profile.
But there's a lot of good tight ends. You didn't even mention Kraft or Laporta, and there's other guys beyond that too. So there's usually 6, 7, 8 guys that could have big roles early.
Yeah, it's going to be good years to have 2nd and 3rd round picks for them. So like I said, that's kind of the looks like more talented than usual. I don't know if you had the same struggles that I did, but when I was looking at this class after the first 3 quarterbacks and the first running back, actually for the first 2 running backs, like the order and where to put these guys was completely up in the air for me. Like, I think there's kind of a true muck of who the running back 3 or below is. And I think the consensus is Levis is probably 4 and Hooker's probably 5 of the QBs. But kind of where they go and in the NFL draft. And frankly, where they go in our draft is a complete mystery to me. Like you had Hooker, I think around the same spot I did, later in kind of mid to late first. Where did you have kind of those guys going in your projection for the NFL draft to lead them to that kind of draft capital?
Well, the big thing at the top of our board is just simply need. The Bengals need a QB, but that's 101. Bijan, best available player in the class. He also has a needed RB. Beyond that, the Lions takes his QB, the Seahawks takes his. You get to the Saints, he's got Pickett. So could he potentially take a QB? He could. To me, I don't know if you want to take the risk on an Anthony Richardson when you already have the risk in a Pickett. Stacking risk on risk with high picks and a lot of value that's just a lot of gambling. If you're a team like the Seahawks who has, two top 6 picks, I could definitely see him going there or something of that nature. But it's just, the Cowboys has T-Law. So when you get to it, does the Texans want to get another QB to go to Watson? So I just have Levis falling to where he fell just for the simple factor there's no one else really with a QB need. You get Levis to go along with Jimmy G, and you just ride that train. And then the 49ers don't essentially even have a starting QB on the team, so that's why I have Hooker as high as he is. The RB3 is really up for debate for a lot of people. I know a lot of people have Charbonnet, a lot of people have Tucker, a lot of people have Zach Evans. Obviously, with some of these 40s, some of these guys ran in the last couple of days. Maybe some of those guys get a better argument for 3, or someone will just fall in love with one of them. So,
yeah, and then and again, and Tucker is one of those where he seems to be everyone's favorite, guy. Like, oh, he's better than if you look at the tape, you look at this, look at the measurables, everyone loves him. But I don't know, like I didn't hear anything about the guy last year during the college season. So it's one of those almost revision. I feel like every year there's a little bit of revisionist history with some of these players where it's like, oh my God, he's so good. Like, how did we miss this like during the season? Where it's like, because he wasn't that good. It was just kind of individual plays and measurables that we're looking at now. So, I guess that's what scouting is. You're looking for traits. You're looking for ability to show what's going on. So really not just counting stats, but that was my thing with Hooker is like, I've seen mocks where he's going to, no joke, the Seahawks in the top 10 as their guy they're developing behind Geno. It's like, right.
He's already 25.
Yeah, but like, okay, if Hooker goes top 10, like obviously that changes the order of operations here in projections. Like that mock had both Levis and Richardson falling out of the top 10.
I think part of that too for me is I've watched a lot of the Tennessee tape. It is a very, very hard offense to decipher and to truly evaluate some of these guys. Because there are plays at times where Jalen Hyatt is about 15 yards away from the closest defender because the play call busted the defense's coverage just so bad that the dude's sitting out in the flat. There's no one within 15 yards of him. And it's a house call to 99% of people in college. That's also one of the things with Cedric Tillman. You have him a lot higher than I do. It's kind of hard to evaluate everything there and how it will correlate to the NFL level. There's definitely the talent with Hooker for him to latch on somewhere and do something. But I just have him going as high as I do simply for need. A lot of the QB stuff will essentially be, if Hendon Hooker does land in Tampa, okay, it's Baker, Hooker, and Trask. You just have to find one of our 32 owners that believes Hooker's going to win it, and he'll go somewhere late first, early second.
I'm shocked that Hooker has jumped up all these draft boards. I don't see it. Like a backup quarterback, maybe. Like I like Tanner McKee more than Hendon Hooker.
There's a lot of QBs in this class that I think could be really solid backups.
Yep, I can agree with that.
Yeah, and then to your point on running back, like I also have Charbonnet as my RB3. I've liked him, but again, he was a guy like Evans who, Charbonnet goes to Michigan, has some success there, but really doesn't break out and become what he is until he goes to UCLA.
And then he goes back for a senior season and surprises everybody.
Yeah. Then you mentioned Tucker. We talked about him a little bit. Evans. I took him as a Debbie pick, thinking, going into college, he's the next Zeke, and then doesn't hang on at TCU. Can't figure out where he's going to school. Then, like I said, ends up at TCU. Transfers from there. Is at Ole Miss. Like has flashes and moments, and what people think are going to be the measurables. And then, like we talked about pre-draft. You had mentioned runs slower and lighter than everyone kind of expected him to. So, again, outside of Bijan and Gibbs, it definitely becomes kind of a dealer's choice. And frankly, draft capital and landing spot is going to have a huge impact on the order these guys go, just because it becomes a really muddled mess.
It really does, man. Because once you get past some of those guys, you're talking like Tajay Spears out of Tulane. A lot of people like him out of nowhere. Dwayne McBride, Tank Bigsby, people loved as a Devy guy. Keandre Miller with TCU, he was one of the risers with how well they did this last year. Georgia's Mick something. I know a lot of people are kind of high on because he was a highly touted guy coming out of Georgia. I know I've seen some articles about the other Texas back getting some love. I know I had a friend of mine who personally loved Deuce Vaughn, but then he found out Deuce Vaughn doesn't weigh 180 pounds soaking wet, so that made him cry a little bit. But yeah, and then even beyond that too, like if you watched USC enough this year for Caleb Williams, Travis Dye is in this class. Some people really like him. It's a good time to need a running back, but until we see draft capital and/or situations, it's going to be really hard because it's going to be hard to figure out who's actually going to be touching the ball.
Yep. All right, and then last but not least, and then I'll kind of shift over a little bit to some of the stuff behind my mock. Linebacker. You had 2 linebackers in your first round. I think I had 2 linebackers in my first round. We both agree on Trenton Simpson. I think you had Jack Campbell, and I had Drew Sanders. Campbell is your first linebacker off the board. What are you liking about him that kind of makes him go in that spot? And did you provide any kind of premium to linebacker due to the potential shift next year?
I did. My thing with Campbell is just I think he's the most all-around good linebacker. I watch him and I see 10 to 12-year career. I think he's gonna. He is a very, very solid linebacker prospect. His ability to drop back in coverage, he does everything you want to. He's not necessarily the best man coverage linebacker, but he's also huge. So when he has been asked to cover tight ends, he's done pretty well. He's not necessarily the guy you want running down running backs out of the backfield because he's not quite as agile as them, being a much larger frame. But he's very good. Simpson just worries me in the same situation as an Isaiah Simmons. He's used in a lot of the same roles. He just has the linebacker tag coming on him, coming out instead of safety, even though they were both used pretty similarly. Obviously, he was used a lot more in the box, but he was asked to do a lot in Clemson. So beyond that, I do really like Sanders. I just don't think that Sanders stands so much apart from the other linebackers that are back there to put him in the first.
Yeah, I mean, and again, there's always the debate of, in past system, a lot of owners in our league wouldn't pay a first round pick for linebacker. But with the changes coming next year, there's definitely a question of this without the positional changes that go with it in terms of number of starters, does scarcity become an issue? So, yeah, I had the same move up in mind. Again, I really like what Simpson brings to the table. And then Sanders as well. Again, neither of them necessarily seem like – usually there's that Mike linebacker that everyone loves, like Devin Lloyd last year or others in previous years. But both these guys seem like, strong side or weak side linebackers, like the Okereke or others in certain roles who may move to Mike eventually, but not necessarily the same kind of tackle monsters, more, players who are going to fit in the right scheme to move up or move down. All right. So moving over to the mock I put together, I tried to do a little bit of a write-up for everything. Nothing too intense here or insightful, but
it's crazy. Hot take after hot take.
I'd say some of the big things that I felt when I was doing this was, first off, I had mentioned the end. I felt like guys like Miles Murphy, who I love as an edge rusher, sitting there and goes. I had 27 in this draft. Kayshon Boutte, who I was a big fan of coming out, and then has really struggled in the draft process, having him fall at the back end of the first round. Again, some of the tight ends that I talked about. I also threw a couple of trades in there because why not? And again, RJ will probably tell me, no way in hell am I doing that trade for that player. But again, just knowing there's going to be some trades moving around some of these things, just try to project some of that. But really, it was one of those where you look up about 16, 17 picks into it and saying, really, I haven't had him go yet? And really felt like that the 20s was a far more target-rich environment than I feel like it was last year when I was trying to do this. Again, the draft will change this and kill values and raise values, but really, I surprised myself that when I got into the 20s, some of these players were still there. So I think it's going to be a great year to have a late first-round pick or early second-round pick because some of this talent is going to fall because of landing spot, and people in the second round are going to get some really good players.
Yeah, there's a lot of like quality or potential quality picks in this draft, and it could go two completely different ways. Like we'd be talking about just an overwhelming amount of defensive players all going in the first round and all like justifiably going in the first round. And just like, I can't believe only 5 of these 9 or 10 good receivers went in the first round. Or we could just, depending on team needs, we could see like a whole bunch of really good value defensive players in the second round if they fall. Like this is a deep class of like quality. So I fully expect to be in the same boat as you when I do my first mock, like looking at it in the teens and just being like, man, that person should have went 5 picks earlier.
And Bill, you've been wildly quiet this episode. Any thoughts on either of the mocks? Any of the comments so far? Any analysis?
Well, I joined late, so I didn't know what we were actually talking about specifics. But now that we're talking about the mock that we have up from you, Mike, I love the trade aspect that you included, but I find it hilarious that you did not have the Falcons trading either pick. He can't afford either one. So it's just one of those things of like, that's like a prime like trade target area right there for me. If I'm looking to get into the later half of the first round, but I mean the name that sticks out more than anything is Cedric Tillman. He's so early. Like I know I'm sure he'll go in the first round because he's a wide receiver, but it just feels so early.
Yeah, I think that was James's feedback as well. That felt early for him, and like I said, I've struggled with where to put kind of receivers. I say 2 through 6 through the mock, but I think it's really 4 through 8 or 4 through 10. There's parts of that offense, that makes him look like Michael Pittman was like the NFL.com's comparison to to Tillman. And if that's the case, then he absolutely goes right there. But, NFL.com has a habit, much like many of these comparisons do, of running out the best case scenario. So I see major issues in kind of anyone but the top two for me receivers games, and Tillman's no exception.
I like Tillman. I think he's just a little early. And Jesus Christ, I just saw your note about pick 17 about why you took Mayer. It's ridiculous.
I mean, you can't
There's
make
no
this shit
false
up.
statement in there.
No, there's no false statement. It's just like it's just so like directly indecent. But in the best way though.
But yeah, and as for your comment on Falcons, I think you're right. But I think Kyle's gonna get settled on this team, and then he's gonna move one of these backs or one of his linebackers to create the space he needs before the draft. It's just a matter of he needs to get online and do it. But I think the sense of urgency is going to go a bit closer.
Yeah, he's definitely a team that needs to keep his picks, especially with who we have mocked to him in those spots. Those could be huge pieces for not only for him to help him win now, but for his kind of retool rebuild that he's got coming.
Because the thing that is going to be the big challenge for him, so he either needs to move Kyler or he needs another QB in that room, because Kyler's not going to be available the first half of the season. So he's either going to run without a quarterback, or he's going to have to find someone who can at least give him some production the first 6 games or 8 games until he comes back. And like that was a real late in the season injury that he had. So expecting him back week 1 is the best cases of all best cases.
Yeah.
So I don't expect any team is done. So again, it's one of those where you don't want to necessarily say, all right, I'm going to project these moves for this team, and that's why I'm making this pick. But at the same time, you don't want to necessarily, say, I'm going to expect this team to stamp out exactly how they are. I think there's going to be moves to be made, and some of these folks, after a little while, are going to settle in and make the team their own in April. All right. Any other draft thoughts? Again, James, I appreciate the hard work putting the mock together and all the analysis you do and share with the league here. I think it's invaluable to some of the folks who may not follow the college game as closely as you do.
Does anybody have any crazy takes?
Crazy takes?
Yeah, you got anything that people would look at you crazy for?
So
none that I'm willing to say.
I thought people were going to be really reactive to either pick 22 or
who'd you have good 22?
22, I have Devin Achane going.
Honestly, what was the other one?
Jalen Carter going to the Lions at 25.
I was going to talk to you. I was going to say something about Carter. I thought it was interesting that he went before the other defensive factors in the first round. That feels more of like a 30 to 32 range pick. Like I just don't like anybody else. Like I'm just going to take the guy that was drafted top 10.
I had a Shane. I have him. His comp I have for him is a Darren Sproles. I think he's just one of those fantastic. You bring him in every once in a while, dump him a couple of balls, maybe put him out at wide receiver, have him run a drag, do this, that, and the other with him, and then give him a couple carries, like a pitch, outside zone, something or another. You got to get him to a creative team that will use him. I don't think he's an every down back, but he could definitely be an explosive piece. And you and me had essentially the same thing with the Lions. I just want best player available for the Lions and all 3 of his first rounders. I want Stroud, Will Anderson, and Jalen Carter. It's just, for me, if I'm the Lions, that team's bad. It's been bad. He didn't make the best picks last year with some of his later first round picks, trying to get a QB and whatnot. I think in this class, if he just sits there, takes the best actual football player available at every pick, he could do a lot for his team.
My reaction to everybody else's reaction is I think you're all horribly wrong on Cedric Tillman. And I think after we find out his landing spot, he skyrockets up boards, and he's probably borderline top 10 pick.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I'm not saying I don't like him. I'm saying that he's got.
Oh no, I have no problem with where you mocked him, Mike. I think everybody else thinking that that's way too early. I think they're wrong.
the thing is, I love Tillman. I think he's the better option out of the two Tennessee
I
guys.
wouldn't say that.
That's consider that a hot take then.
There we go. Hot takes. Bam.
But no, I could easily see him going, but like right now, like the name just doesn't resonate. Top 15. It resonates like bottom half of the draft kind of thing. But I mean, anything can happen. There's reaches all the time. But yeah, I don't know. I would rather have Tillman over Hyatt for sure.
Well, I have Chase Brown going 31 in this league. I think Chase Brown ends up in Miami or 49ers as that next, oh my goodness, he's going to be that guy kind of player.
The 49ers don't need him, do they?
Yeah, but did they really need Sermon, and did they really need Elijah Mitchell, and then did
That's
they
why they
really need Christian McCaffrey? Like, you just keep bringing them in.
Yeah, but I guess that would depend on what round you would have them actually draft.
I'm not necessarily saying he's going to go high. He's going to be this year's that guy.
But yeah, he's going to go in the 5th round he's going to go day 3 to the 49ers.
Or
He's going to get
Miami.
projected for that 3rd spot behind Mitchell, and someone's going to get excited about him because Mitchell has trouble staying on the field, and
so does McCaffrey.
and their usage of McCaffrey is not, we're going to give him 20 rushes a game. It's, we're going to give him 10 to 15 rushes, use him in the passing game, and then spell him another running back who fits our system. So that's going to be one of those where the landing spot's going to influence how high he rises.
So I think there's like, there's a pretty large like talent like drop off, I think, after like the first 4 or 5 running backs. But like after that drop off, the one that I kind of like is the one from UAB.
Dwayne McBride.
Yes.
Yeah, I've watched him. That's my alma mater. I've watched him play.
Very, very big fan of like just his style.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. Him and Tajay Spears. There's several small school guys where if they get good enough draft capital, they're gonna go up a lot higher. And I think there's a real shot that they do when you have to take in consideration that you have the Charbonnet and Zach Evans with off the field issues. That those guys, I wouldn't be surprised if either of those guys go higher than one of those two. Not necessarily both, but one of them.
I think there's absolutely no chance that Texans passes on Levis or Johnson if they're there at 9 for a DN.
Watson.
Johnson or Johnston?
It's written out as Johnson, but I
Is
think
it Johnson?
I think
thought it was.
It's Johnston. Yeah, it's Johnston.
But yeah, there's no way he goes for Will Anderson over either of those guys. But yeah, I don't know. I guess like hot take ish. I don't know that Washington's going to be any good.
Which Washington?
Darnell, the tight end. I don't know that he's going to be any good. So like, it reminds me heavily of like Bowers and Washington remind me of Fant and Hawkinson, and they both kind of fit their own roles. And Fant was just garbage for like so long. I kind of feel like that's what Washington is going to be, and then Bowers is going to be like the Hawkinson version, just like ready to go right out of the gate.
I think your floor with Washington is a Mercedes Lewis. He's going to be in the league for like 12 years blocking.
Yeah, but that okay, so that's like a Hayden Hurst, Mark Andrews situation. Hurst is pointless or was pointless with Baltimore, but he had the higher capital. Like, it's just a comparison. I don't think Darnell fits fantasy purposes. I think he fits real life better.
I would definitely say he definitely projects a lot better that way. But I think the other thing is at Georgia he was always the number 2 receiving option. I don't I think he's gonna get more opportunities at the NFL level. Like, the whole thing with OJ Howard at Alabama was, oh, come back and we'll give you more opportunities. He just never got more opportunities. And then at the NFL, he didn't really do much when he did. I think Darnell's going to do a little something with his opportunities. I don't know if it's going to be massive, but I think he's going to be probably a better NFL player than a college player, production-wise.
See, what appeals to me is not even looking at tight ends and just letting you guys do all the digging on it. And then I will go buy one of the productive ones in 4 years.
That's not a bad way to go about it,
I have heard that if any class is going to come out the gates being productive, it's going to be this class. But I cannot provide much more than the top guy goes to Notre Dame, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing is, like, we all said that about, oh my God, Kyle Pitts is going to come out and light the world on fire, and oh my God, Trey McBride looks like it. It's like we do this every year, so. And every year the data shows us that we're wrong. So one year we're going to get an outlier year and we're going to be right.
Well, I was about to actually say it's Trey McBride's season this year. Like last year, he was sent behind Ertz with his ACL and coming back. It won't be coming back till a little bit later. He's going to be fun early. And then K. Dotton with essentially everybody who's gone in Tampa now. So.
Yeah, that's a question of, with Baker trying to keep Evans and Godwin and him and others happy. It's like, okay, they're going to be enough targets. But again, that's a conversation for another day because it's time to talk trades. We cooled off a little bit, not as bad as 2 weeks ago, but, from the 19, I think we had between 2 weeks ago and last week, we had, I think, 6 here because there was a taxi theft mixed in there as well. Some pretty inconsequential and some definitely worth jumping into. First and foremost, I think it was the Dolphins and Texans was the one after the pod last week. 331 for 420, 514, and 521. I mean, he's moving up. He's using 2 fists to move up more than a round if you think about comp picks. So not a bad swap by the Texans. And, as a lover of 5th-round picks, I don't fault the Dolphins for doing that, but at the same time, I don't know if that's the right value.
Yeah, if I'm breaking down a 3rd-round pick, like that's the range that I'm breaking down. I'm not taking, like, I'm not giving up an earlier 3rd-round pick for lesser picks, but that's fine.
Then next one, we keep saying Patriots never listens to us. He never learns. He never does anything differently. After torching him because he traded, I think it was either 201 or 202 for getting his second back next year, and then getting that pick back from me. This time he traded a 201 for 24 first. So guys, he does listen. He does absorb information when we share it with him. So great job, everybody.
We're so proud of you.
Hooray.
But yeah, I think Giants are definitely well positioned in the division, probably a playoff team right now. But with Cowboys rising, that could end up being a bit of a killing field. So who knows? Could end up, from the playoffs in the 20s, which would be a nice improvement from the 201. Then we have another Dolphins moving from the 3rd to later to pick up later round picks. This time, moving down only 15 from 302 to 317, picking up 423, 509, and 510. I haven't looked at the Dolphins. They have a lot of roster space into a year availability that they're going for.
He has a lot of roster space, but this is a lot of 5ths that he accumulated here.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out because
he's got 26 million. 5ths.
He's got 5 5s. He added 4 in these 2 trades, and he added.
So he could essentially draft his 2nds, his 3rd, his 4ths, and then all of his 5ths and give them all 2-year deals. That's what he's currently got going for him.
Yeah, which is tough because then you can't really extend any of those guys. But
2 years of
nonetheless,
450K though.
yeah, it's true. Then the big one, I would say, is, well, not the big one, but probably one of the bigger ones. Texans grabbing a third top 10 pick, moving up from 26 with the 212, 217, and 220 to the Jets for 109 and their 24th third. So the Jets really seem to be focused on making this draft the draft that really rounds out the build of their team. And then as their guys age is when they start moving into contention. So moving down from 109 does that. Picking up 3 mid-seconds in the process is definitely worth it to move down half a round. And then now Texans has 3 premium players from this draft that he can get in the first 9 picks. It's going to be really interesting to see what he does with that. But the thing that surprises me is if you look at the trade bait right now, and who knows what he's going to do with this, he said he's looking for a package that he can move those 3 picks. So I don't know if he's trying to move out of the draft altogether or what he's doing now, but this could be a fun development to watch for the next month.
I think he's just looking for whatever he can find. He obviously has some targets. I think we've all had enough conversations around where the draft is going to fall, especially in the top 6, that he's going to have at least one option there. But I don't know. Mike, weren't you were the other one that did like the 108 trade first, right?
Yeah, I gave him the 108 for 117 and 202, I think it was.
I don't know if this is better or worse. Like as far as like value goes.
I think it's a better fit for the team doing it.
Yeah.
The Jets really needs a defense. You get 3 mid-2s to help you flush out a young defense to go along with all the vets you have.
More for the Texans.
Oh.
Yeah, like I don't know if this is better or worse for Texans to do this because those 3 2s are pretty valuable.
They definitely are for a team like his that's rebuilding too. But kind of the way I saw it is he's gonna go in, grab himself 3 elite offensive pieces, and then worry about building the rest of the team later.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, again, it's different ways to build.
Kind of like the way the Jets did it last year. Is essentially what he's doing. Like the Jets last year had 107, 108, got Wilson and Jameson Williams.
What's going to be interesting is if it goes something like, Bijan 1, 2 quarterbacks, and then kind of as your mock had it, where the Saints go JSN or a skill position player instead of a quarterback at 4. What happens at 5? Does he take the third top quarterback there? Does he reach for like a Gibbs or something like that? Reach is the wrong word, but is he in a position to not go best player available yet? I'd say probably not. But
if one of those top 3 quarterbacks is sitting there, we all may as well just strap in for the 8-hour clock because there's no way he keeps that pick.
I know he loves Watson, but I feel like if AR is there, I feel like he takes AR. I think he takes AR and he has his room stacked with Purdy, AR, and Watson. He rolls to the season with the 3 QBs. He sells off Purdy for some stuff. And then he rides AR for a little bit and makes sure that Watson can bounce back. And then if he doesn't see anything he likes out of AR's ability to throw at the NFL level, as long as he's still running and looking good in that sense, he can just turn and sell him for something good too. So,
yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I feel like Sean is going to want to get as much value as he can. He's going to take every second of that clock if one of those 3 falls.
Again, and yeah, so he's either going to try and stay on. I think he'll. I agree with James on this. I think he'll listen to offers, but if it's any of those 3 quarterbacks who's there, he may just say, "Screw it, I'm taking it, and I'll figure it out afterwards." Because that's who anyone would be training up for. Like there's an aspect of like when Brandon, you were trying to trade the 103 last year, where it was like, okay, it could be Pickett, but it could be a lot of other players. Kind of fait accompli that if it's one of the 3 quarterbacks sitting there and Bijan and JSN is gone, that's going to be the player taken. So it's less risky to just take the player and then move him afterwards rather than trading the pick.
We'll find out in a month.
Yep.
I'll trade for early picks.
There we go. Let the games begin.
With your
Moving on, Brandon. I'm missing something with this trade. So good for you. So Buccaneers trades a first to get to the 201, then flips the 201 with Van Ginkel, Justin Watson, who was a free agency pickup, and Matt Breida, who's a free agency pickup, to get Damian Harris, who looks like he's a complimentary back on the Bills this year. Hell of a pickup value-wise for you as far as I'm concerned. Again, the fact that Van Ginkel was kind of a cap dump and 2 free agency players, but still the 201 for Harris, I think, is more than swinging this trade in your favor.
Well, Giants isn't here.
Oh, shit, that's right. He was here. So I again, he dropped out randomly in the middle of the podcast. I don't know why. I made no comment about it, but
He said he had an allergy attack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's no fun.
Yeah. It's a bunch of BS. He's just giving bad takes, had to leave or embarrass himself.
I was really surprised when this deal happened. Personally, I was surprised honestly when the Bucks made both of the deals he made, and I'm pretty happy about both of them being in his division. So, but yeah, the Damian Harris really doesn't make any sense to me. If there's more money behind Harris, I could understand it a little bit more for Buffalo and the spot that it is, but it's a 1 year, 1.7 million, and if they cut him, they only owe him 600K. So they could still go running back in the draft and still cut him before kickoff of the season. And you gave up
11.4 million in our cap.
Yeah.
Well, that's because Bucks extended him.
Well, yeah, it was a fifth year option.
Yeah.
Which is why I was getting rid of him for whatever I could.
I think this is Giants adamantly believing that Saquon Barkley is not going to play this year. He so badly doesn't want him to sign the tag anyway. But I think this is just Matt Breida is my running back in New York. And
I have Najee Harris still.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll watch the slander, but yeah, no. Breida's always the complimentary back role is always going to be there, and again, Saquon was uncharacteristically healthy last year, so he doesn't want to sign the tender, but I think eventually he will. And Breida's still going to have a role as that complimentary guy, and that leads to a touchdown here or there, and all he needs is Breida to start 3 or 4 games. And it probably pays off.
I do have a question. Who initiated this?
He sent me this offer. Well, he sent me a offer similar, and I switched around some of the cap that I was taking back, and then he accepted it. But he initiated the idea for kind of cap dump depth and 201 for Harris, which I was extremely excited to slam accept. I would have accepted his first offer, but I wanted to see if he would give me players I was at least interested in depth-wise at positions, and he did. So I tried to get an early second for Harris since I acquired him, and no one was taking it. So when I got 201, I was pretty excited just because he landed with the Bills as a backup, and they might still draft Bijan. So
he may not be a backup, man. James Cook and him do very different things. They're just going to be 50-50 splits unless they draft somebody different.
Well, isn't Hines also still there? And
yeah, Hines got
expect them to draft
restructured.
someone. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. No, you weren't here, but like I said, his contract too. It's only 600K guaranteed. That's very easy to say. All right, we picked you up, but this isn't going to work out. We went and got X guy in the draft. We like him better. We're going to keep Hines as a receiving back / special teamer. You know, like I know they went and got Deontay Harris too, the All Pro, but he's had injury stuff, so there's a chance that both Harris and Hines make the team. Especially with Harris has shown that he can just go out there and run a vert, run past people.
Oh, do you mean Hardy?
Well, it was Harris. They hyphenated and they changed it to Hardy.
Okay. The old Saints one.
Yes.
Yep.
I gotcha.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's interesting.
And we're going to
So
talk
let's-
about the important one.
Let's talk about probably the biggest one that caught all of us by surprise, and now he's going to have Buccaneers flooded with offers from both Broncos, myself, and others.
No.
Derek Carr, Juju, Rashad Weaver, Daniel Hardy, and Jermaine Pratt for Justin Fields, Velus Jones, and Travis Gibson. Classic goose trade, getting less than $10 million quarterback still in Carr, picking up Juju as a cheap receiver on a controllable contract. Weaver at, again, less than $1 million. Hardy at less than $3 million, and Pratt. These are all kind of goose type of best ball players. So it's a great cash out on Fields. When I think to acquire him, Commanders was breaking his finger accepting for like 2 Chiefs first round picks, and then this is the haul he gets when he sells them. But again, Fields has got a lot more weapons around him this year than he has in years past. I think a lot of people are thinking they're one of the teams that won free agency, so he could take a jump. And I think, as Panthers mentioned, he was QB9 last year, so not necessarily a bad piece to have in a Super Bowl defending team. And who knows if Juju's going to, have the same kind of success in New England that he has everywhere else. I mean, 933 yards last year, but inconsistent. And now he's moving and playing with Mac Jones. I don't know. I guess he's taking the Myers role, but I don't know if he's that kind of player. We'll see. I've talked enough. What do you guys think?
So I don't. Sorry, I don't know who Weaver and Hardy are, but like leaving them out, this is awesome. Like just like in a swap factor, and I don't know. Fuck you both. Like everybody knows I want Fields. Can't get him from Chiefs. Never could. And I don't have any kind of space to get him from Bucks. And fuck it all. But no, I mean overall, like generally speaking, I think Juju. I don't think he's gonna have the same role as Myers. I think he took Myers' money that they gave him instead of Jacoby. But at the same time, I think that Mac Jones is not exactly Pat Mahomes or Ben Roethlisberger.
Watch your mouth.
So he also doesn't have a number 1 playing beside him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't have an AB or a Kelsey. So I don't know what this is going to look like for him. But I guess the only benefit to him being in New England is that Bill O'Brien is back as the OC. Carr is fine. He's got a great O-line in front of him. But man, Fields is the big piece here, and congrats Bucks on getting them.
Well, I think it was a reasonable deal. I think the value of a Derek Carr, a Juju, I know Bill doesn't know who he is, but Rashad Weaver is a very relevant defensive end in our league.
Yes,
And
he is.
Jermaine Pratt probably do equal roughly a Justin Fields. And then I don't know who started it, but like adding a Velus Jones and a Tevis Gibson to the Chiefs side doesn't seem that awful to me. I would much rather have the Justin Fields side, but I like both packages.
It's very Bears heavy. I think that was commented on in the chat. The Bucks got all Bears players.
Oh yeah.
Wonder if that was on purpose.
I don't know that it was. Based on like the responses that they were giving, I don't think it was intentional.
I feel like if Justin Fields does take a step forward this upcoming season, this trade is going to look a little awkward
Yeah.
in like a year from now. But if he kind of stays the same or isn't as impressive and the conversation continues, or is he going to be the quarterback of the future in Chicago? I mean, I think the three main pieces that Goose got back are exactly his type of player. They're definitely improvements across his roster at under market value deals for the next 4 or 5 years for each of them, which is pretty great. Carr just turned 32 like yesterday, so like he could theoretically still play for a couple of years. So he's got a $10 million quarterback for the next couple of seasons at least.
Oh, he'll move him next year. That'll be Chiefs quarterback this year, and next year it'll be somebody different.
Yeah, I don't know. He likes to have multiple quarterbacks, so I assume Carr will just be one of his pieces there. But I like the upside of the Justin Fields side personally, but I think in a best ball contract league, like what Chiefs acquired is probably like better value, assuming no meteoric rise from Justin Fields.
Yeah, like outside of Carr, all 4 of those other pieces will start at least 6 games for him this year. Like, assuming he keeps them. But in terms of the way they'll pop, like Weaver had 5 sacks last year, was a 4th-round pick, is less than $1 million in our league. Like, he's a second-year player. He's going to be cheap and cost controllable for a while.
Weaver's facing criminal charges.
Again?
Yeah, criminal for how cheap he was.
Again.
It's the same ones. It's been pushed back by the courts twice now.
Oh, that hampered his draft stock. Like
capital.
He should have been a first-round pick in the actual NFL draft if it wasn't for legal trouble looming over his head. And I guess it's still going on. Almost 3 years later.
Yes, it's been put off twice at this point.
Gosh.
No, he was supposed to have his hearing 2 weeks ago, but it got pushed again. No, because I was talking to the Chiefs about somebody else, and he was trying to package Weaver to me, and I realized that he was still going on with that. I'm like, okay, that's interesting, but I really like the player I like, and I wasn't even going after Weaver, and we had a couple of weird trade offers. So,
what's the legal trouble?
I'm not very pertinent to the case. I do know it's still going on.
I feel awful to say this, but he came out in a year where there were like multiple players with legal trouble. So I forget what exactly.
It's a misdemeanor assault charge.
Simple assault.
Grabbed her, so a woman claims Weaver grabbed her by the throat, pushed her to the ground, where she ultimately hit her head. Like, this is exactly what Charles Omenihu just did.
Yep.
And
he's gonna get suspended for like 4 games, and that's about it.
Yeah, and Omenihu just picked up like $8 million a year from the Texans in our league. So this, I feel awful saying this, but like this is not a big deal.
Yeah.
Not as far as the NFL is concerned.
Yeah, right. There's no video. It's whatever.
There were no bets placed, so he's good.
So out of all this, Daniel Hardy's probably just cap purposes. Like that seems fine.
Yeah, I mean, like he's irrelevant. Like he's a player that has like some form of potential, especially since Los Angeles has made no attempt to improve their linebackers.
Right.
But he's not like very much more a throw-in than probably any type of value.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing really with the Rams for me right now is just they're depleted everywhere. They lost 3 corners and a safety to free agency. Now they lost a middle linebacker. They don't have a lot of draft picks. It's going to be impossible for them to replace everybody. So it's not a bad idea to grab who you can on who's still there, because those people are going to have a step up on any undrafted free agent that comes in, because that's going to be the bulk of their ability to get is going to be undrafted guys that are going to want opportunities. At least these guys have already had time in the system. Gives them a little bit of
I guarantee the Rams trade down and acquire more picks
Oh, they will.
Yeah,
But they have so many holes though that no matter what, it's gonna be hard to fix everything.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're drafting towards the top of the draft next year.
Yeah, I mean, well, what was it? They got rid of Ramsey, and it barely did anything to their cap situation.
Right.
Well, their big issue is their tackle situation's not good. You have Havenstein, who's an old man, and then Noteboom was awful last year. He was a revolving door. So they essentially have no real offensive line. Allen Robinson was not worth the money. Skronwick got hurt. Stafford got hurt. The defensive line couldn't get any pressure outside of Donald. I know Floyd finished with 9 sacks, but I was able to pick him up with the 4th rounder from Bill because he had 0 sacks at right at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't get pressure. And outside of Ramsey, they were starting not a lot of very talented corners. So they've got a lot of issues.
Mostly financial, though.
Hey, they got their ring, man. They're just going to show you the ring.
Yeah. That's exactly how it's supposed to be done. And sometimes you run into these type of situations and you see it through. And every time you're in a bad situation, you just look down at that championship ring and you go, it was all worth it.
Yeah.
That's what it takes sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, solid 75-minute episode, gentlemen. Thank you for joining and contributing as usual. Again, I hope this this won't necessarily be evergreen like some of our other ones. We'll find out either through more pro days or through the draft or trades or things like that our mock drafts are off and our analysis is bupkis, but it's fun to talk about. And it's that fun time of year where you hear about a player, you go watch a YouTube clip or a couple of them, and you think, oh, maybe this is the guy. So a lot of opportunity, lots of fun, and hope springs eternal at draft time. So anyways, let's get to the fun part. Thanks all for listening, and have a good one.